Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this presentation whenever you're watching it. This is, in fact, a recording of the presentation that we gave at the Festival of Marketing, where we look at how we use data in digital advertising, and look at some of the challenges that face us there. We obviously think it needs to change. This presentation is designed to discuss a bit of the why and the how and the what. So let's jump into a bit of background. Data is widely used in digital marketing and in digital advertising in particular to identify the individual behind a device. This allows us to go back to the fundamental basics of marketing. So models like the 4 Ps. Advertisers use data to identify the consumers they wish to talk to and to show them the right product at the right price. Publishers use data to demonstrate to advertisers that they have those consumers, and so therefore they should have that advertising spend. Throughout the entire ecosystem, both advertisers and publishers use data continuously to optimize the user experience and to ensure that they're delivering that correct message to the consumer. It is worth mentioning as well that digital has been quite a disruptive paradigm for advertisers in particular. As Sheryl Sandberg said at the Mexico, digital has significantly flattened the funnel. It's now possible for a consumer to go from that first engagement to conversion in 1 or 2 clicks, and it all happens within the same environment. Finally, the other feature of digital is that everything is logged and tracked and measured. So actually using data in the digital context generates yet more data that can be used. Setting up feedback loops is very easy and is something that we should look to do in order to optimize how we use our data and how we talk to our consumers. Of course, there are some significant challenges, and I think these will be familiar to everyone watching. One of the first is that we don't use data everywhere we could do, and we don't use it consistently everywhere. This leads to all sorts of discrepancies and difficulties, never mind a lack of efficiency and a lack of effectiveness. The second is that the way in which the audiences are applied in digital advertising in particular is not scalable. And I'm going to explain why in a little bit in more detail. But I think anyone who uses data in the programmatic ecosystem in particular could verify that. Of course, the ad tech tax is a problem. Now, you do have to pay for your suppliers. That's the nature of accessing the ecosystem. But there are a lot of inefficiencies there. And one of the inefficiencies that we've identified and we think can be solved is the fact that often you're purchasing data twice. Often the advertiser and the publisher purchase the same data without necessarily needing to. And of course, the other emerging challenge, and something that I'm sure everyone watching this is aware of, is GDPR. More broadly, it's that need for a responsible use of data and better governance around data. So this is something that is going to be an ongoing challenge and something, of course, that we need to address as part of being good at brands and having good relationships with our consumers. These challenges can be coalesced into a few different issues that really need to be solved. So the first, of course, is that poor consumer experience. Not applying all our data everywhere, not applying it consistently, and of course applying it inefficiently leads to that poor consumer experience, which is bad for everyone. As mentioned, this requirement for good governance and compliance is only going to grow and is something that the industry really needs to address head on. And another key fact, and this is a key fact, of course, is that we're wasting budget by not using data effectively and efficiently. Wasted budget actually feeds into poorer consumer experiences as well. In fact, if we can do everything more efficiently, we can use data more widely without necessarily feeling the pinch. So what is the solution to this? We think that really we should be looking at people-based marketing as a must, a return, if you like, to core principles. Really, this is best practice, and this is, you know, the goal of using all of the data that we have wherever we have it. Of course, that does require having that good enough data all over the ecosystem and applying it consistently. But we think this paradigm it should be powering how we talk to our consumers and how we use data. The real disruptive pattern of digital in marketing, for all that it has flattened the funnel and, you know, generated easier and more numerous ways for us to talk to our consumers, is that actually it's eroded this very core principle of marketing. So this really is something that we think we need to address, and this presentation is here to explain how we think it should be addressed. So we talk of data at the point of interaction. What we mean by this is applying all of your data at that point of interaction once. If you can apply all of your data, then by definition you should be able to generate a better experience for everyone involved. By applying it at that point of interaction, it should also, by definition, be more scalable and more flexible. And again, I'm going to explain why that is the case. And then finally, because I can have that consistency across all of my engagements, it should be better aligned to my consumer engagement across all other channels and audiences as well. All of these are fundamental principles that, as marketers, we should be looking to embrace. Just that last point is worth expanding upon a little bit. My colleague Ed Kleter gave a seminar at De Mexico, where he spoke about the need for channel agnostic audiences and how we shouldn't be trying to solve what is fundamentally a data problem with technology. And I think this really builds on that point and reinforces his argument there. And I encourage you to have a look at his presentation to learn more about that. So let's look at how this might work. In this case, I'm going to focus on the programmatic ecosystem because this is, in some ways, the place where we can get the most value out of this. It's in some ways the place where we think we've solved this, but actually, as we'll see, it's also one of the more challenging environments to actually thoroughly solve this. So I'm sure this will be familiar to everyone. You have your publishers on the sell side who use supply-side platforms to make their inventory available to the exchanges, and for advertisers on the buy side to buy through their DSPs. And in practice, it's very straightforward. The person who bids the most wins. Usually it's a second price auction, so that means they pay a little bit more than the person in second place, and they serve up their creative to that user. But actually, it's a little bit more complicated than that. This overlooks one of the crucial pillars of programmatic advertising, which is that for advertisers, I can choose precisely who I want to bid on, not just the media, but also the individual who's generating that impression. And in order to do that, I need to apply my data to the ecosystem. And actually, publishers want to put their data out there as well. They need to decide which data, which SSP they're going to use, and how much they're going to put their full price at, and so on. Now, often, the technology that people will use to do this is a data management platform, and that will come with a flat fee for both the capability and the data. And actually, this allows you to understand and to see how data can end up being purchased twice, and how this inflates the ad tech tax. So in this instance, rather than the publisher getting perhaps 66 cents, they're only getting 46 cents. And actually, the advertiser is spending 86 cents. Now, we're not here to attack DMPs. We think DMPs are a vital part of the programmatic ecosystem. They are the definitive tool for putting your first-party data there. You should definitely be using one. But we don't think that accessing third-party data or second-party data should be done through a DMP, because as you can see, it generates these inefficiencies. So let's try and clear this up a bit. The inefficiencies clearly come through those loops. Having these two loops here is what's contributing to this. And of course, every loop in these ecosystems has erosion rates. You don't match as many users as you think you ought to. Leakage. Really what we'd like to do is to access this external data, this second or third party data, once. And ideally we'd like to access it once as the impression is going through. So we've come up with a solution in partnership with the ad exchanges, and actually there are multiple other solutions that you can use. What we do is for the purposes of this, we'll remove the DMPs, although of course you would still use your DMP in practice. But what we do is we place all our data into the middle of the ecosystem in a process we call bid enrichment. And here what we do is we actually enrich the bid as it goes through the ad exchange and offer that for auction. So now the DSP still wins. It pays a little bit more because we've had to add data, but it wins a dynamically priced auction for both media and data together. As you can see, this is much more efficient. This is a much more intelligent way of accessing data at this point of interaction. It's also much more secure because you're only putting that data out there once. And it's much more compliant because you can understand exactly who is accessing your data and when. This is a very simple example of data at the point of interaction. Now we focus on the programmatic ecosystem here because it's one of the hardest places to solve this. The technical challenges alone are very difficult. But actually, this could be applied in any ecosystem at all. So what does this mean for your consumers and indeed your business? Well, there are a number of immediate consequences. The first, of course, is we believe fundamentally that being able to put all of your data at every interaction is going to deliver a better experience. And we have the data and the statistics to support that. The second point that flashed up there, of course, is the improvement in governance. This cannot be overlooked and is going to be increasingly important, particularly once GDPR comes into force in May. The other point that really we haven't gone into in great depth, but hopefully you can immediately see how this is the case, is that it offers true scalability in the same way that programmatic advertising offered true scalability in inventory. By adding the data into the auction, we now allow you to spend your budget much more intelligently, much more efficiently, and across many more impressions. All of this adds up to maximizing your investment. That second point, better governance, is worth just touching upon, as it folds into another concept that we think is very important: responsible marketing. Responsible marketing is obviously very closely related to people-based marketing. It requires being truly consumer-centric. And data at the point of interaction does provide this basis for governance. We think actually that this new governance paradigm presents an enormous opportunity for brands rather than necessarily just a challenge. And we do think it's something that, provided we act in a responsible way, can add tremendous value. As I've mentioned a couple of times, this isn't just something that applies in programmatic. We actually think this can apply across every engagement that you have with your consumers. It goes back to that theme as well of building channel agnostic audiences. If you can get your data right once, then it's simply a case of deploying them across all of your channels effectively and efficiently and as uniformly as possible. So just to recap, is the way we use data in digital advertising out of date? We know there are so many case studies out there that demonstrate that actually data provides tremendous value in digital advertising. It works. But we also know that it can be done much more efficiently and much more effectively. It's not everywhere it should be. It's definitely not scalable under the current buying models. And those current buying models actually introduce inefficiencies, which we commonly label the ad tech tax, that really impact the effectiveness of your advertising spend. Finally, with the requirements that's forthcoming under new legislation, and indeed as marketers that we really should be considering at all times, it doesn't support best practice governance. So, some key takeaways, just to summarize here. It's very important to consider how you might go about this, how you might implement data at the point of interaction. There are numerous ways that you could do it. This is one example that we've come up with, but really the key concept is applying all of your data at every interaction. To do this, you're probably going to need to rely on the right levels of expertise both within and without of your organization. Data is really difficult. We know it works, but also we know that many people struggle to get the most value out of it. This level of expertise is available. Please do speak to the experts, and we're here to help. Finally, it's very important that we continue to challenge the status quo. Data has sort of worked in the programmatic advertising ecosystem in particular, but actually it can work better. And really this is fundamental to how we should be operating as marketers anyway. And finally, I think we need to perhaps remember that actually marketing is about brands talking to individuals. We shouldn't really be bucketing these individuals into channels or particular audiences. We should be building cross-channel strategies, actually cross-channel audiences, that really we can apply to all of those channels consistently. And that's just good practice. Thank you very much for your time. I hope this was useful. Unfortunately, you can't come and see us at the Experian News Agent because that's in the Festival of Marketing. But please do email in any questions.